Okay, so this is with regard to, um, I guess there's another case in the news. This one actually made national news. I've been following the Stand Your Ground law for a while. And there's another case in the news. I basically keep my eye on like all the major news outlets, and there's a couple of minor ones that I keep my eye on that report stories that a lot of times don't make it to major news outlets. It's a prepper thing, I think. It's just what I do to stay aware. I think it's important to remain as aware as possible of um, of everything going on. That and I'm just a news and politics junkie in general, so but in this particular, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, which is basically anything regarding the Second Amendment. So this is just one of those things that I consider my issue, so to speak. Anyway, there's another case in the news. There's another young kid dead in the state of Florida. Not even a year after one kid was basically executed. And I guess basically, let's draw a distinction. That's the first thing I want to do is make a distinction between stand your ground and castle doctrine, because they're not the same thing. Castle doctrine basically means that you have the right to defend your home, your property, where you live. Someone brings trouble to you, someone is there on your property, they shouldn't be there, they break in your house, you have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to defend your loved ones. Which is not the same as stand your ground. Stand your ground is basically, anywhere you are. You could be anywhere. It doesn't matter. If, basically someone feels threatened by you or wants to claim they do, they can shoot you. And you're dead. So they can shoot you for things like your music was too loud. Which is what happened in this instance. These are cases. The case last year was a clear-cut case where this kid was, I guess, on the way home from the store and was pursued and executed. And that person, Trayvon Martin case, I think we're all familiar with it, where he was basically pursued by this guy who was trying to play cop and capriciously and arbitrarily executed. These cases have made the news because they're racially charged, which is unfortunate. Because there have been lots of other cases that I'm aware of that have not made national news, have not become huge stories, because they involve, they don't have the same politics of race involved. Obviously there's the fact that these are kids too. That's a big deal as well. So I should throw that in there. These are just children that are being killed, but there was an instance where there was a man on a 911 call. People seem to think that they could use the 911 operators to cover their butt, which by the end of the phone call, it was clear that this is what this was, because you hear the whole thing unfolding on the phone while this man, and this is two white men, this is not, anything that has politics of race or a child involved. There are a lot of cases that I'm familiar with. Since the Stand Your Ground, in the states where the Stand Your Ground laws were enacted, so-called justifiable homicides, where people have invoked this law, have gone through the roof, have tripled and quadrupled. And let me just state what my own views are as far as the Second Amendment, because I'm a very pro-Second Amendment person, probably to more of a degree than a lot of other people are pro-Second Amendment. My own Second Amendment views are that if you go to a gun dealer or, a weapons dealer, you pretty much, I believe in people who can prove, if you can identify who you are, if you can pass a background check, you should be able to buy and have access to, if you can afford it, military grade firearms and ammo. That's what I believe. That's not how it is, but that's what I believe. If as long as I think the laws that are in place are enough, they're more than enough. Just what has to happen is there has to be, as long as the laws that are in place are enforced, I think that's more than enough. You can prove who you are. You can prove you're not a nut. You can prove that you don't have a criminal background. then you should be able um, to have access to military grade firearms and ammo. Now, with that being said, the gun grabbers, they get all up in arms every time something bad happens. And it really is asinine. And this is a part of and I know I've made clear that, I'm liberal, I'm a progressive, and this is just one of the things that within, with other liberals, other progressives, that I just get really, really incensed and really disgusted by, is the fact that, you know, some nut or some loon or some sociopath goes off the deep end and does something insane, and the first thing they want to do is punish law-abiding citizens and chip away at people's right to bear arms, basically. And it's disgusting. It's stupid, because it's like, that's like wanting to tightly control or even ban altogether people's ability to buy motor vehicles for fear that some irresponsible person, some idiot, is going to drink themselves into a stupor, get behind the wheel, slam into a minivan full of people coming 90 miles an hour down the highway, and kill everybody. I mean, yeah, you're going to have people that are bad seeds. You're going to have people who do things you're not supposed to do. But these people are in a minority, and it's ridiculous. It's like wanting to ban automobiles, wanting to ban cars, because there's a possibility that someone may, through some act of extreme negligence, get into an accident. It doesn't make any sense to me. You don't blame the car, you blame the driver. It's silly to blame an inanimate object, in my opinion. I think that the gun laws that we have in place are more than enough. And yeah, you're going to have, like in a case in Colorado, you're going to have a case where, sometimes someone's going to go in, and they may pass all the parameters that are in place. I mean, there's not so much really that can be done. If a person goes in, they can prove who they are. They can pass a background check, which obviously the guy that shot up the movie theater in Colorado, he was able to pass a background check. He was able to prove who he was. And upon background checks being run, he was able to pass that stuff. There was no reason to believe that this man would go out and do this stuff. And you're going to have instances of that. But again, punishing everyone else for the occasional nut or loon or sociopath that may get through the cracks is like, it's like banning people from crossing the street, or trying to severely restrict people's ability to cross the street on the off chance that they may get hit by a car. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. Or on the off chance, banning cars. I know, why don't we outlaw fire? That's what we'll do. All these terrible fires, burning people, are responsible for people losing their homes, people having their homes burned down all the time, and explosions, and God only knows what else. We should ban fire, people. That's what we should do. Okay, I'm being sarcastic, and that's bad. I shouldn't do that. I apologize, but okay, back to the stand your ground law versus, basically, stand your ground versus castle doctrine. I'm all in favor of castle doctrine. I believe that if someone is on your property, in your home, they don't belong there. They shouldn't be there. If someone breaks in your house, you do what you have to do, and you ask questions later. That's my opinion. But I've followed other stand your ground cases. This is not the first loud music case where someone has just because they wanted to, executed someone. There's another case that happened recently. I think it was like maybe a year ago, maybe a little more, except this involves two white guys. As a matter of fact, I think there's a YouTube video, or at least there was at some point, where this man, and you watch the whole thing unfold. He goes down to his neighbor's house. I guess these people are in the habit of it was a firefighter who did this. He went down to these people's house. You could hear him clearly because he took a camera with him. Now, mind you, someone in fear of their life, he went to where the victim was. He went to these people's house because these people were blasting music. And he knocks on the door. And you could see his whole posture. If I find it, I'm going to pin it to my politics section. But I'll find the YouTube video. His entire posture, the entire time, was he was the aggressor. He went down there with an aggressive posture. He went down there with, and these people are going to do as they're told, attitude, and you could see that conveyed very clearly on, this video. I guess he thought the video would cover his ass. All this video did was incriminate him, because he goes down there and he, you know, knocks on the door. He asks the people to turn the music down, and people at parties, because this is what this was. I guess this is a party animal. I guess this is something that happens all the time. But you can hear the shooter on the tape say, "I'm tired of losing to these people." You can hear him very clearly say that. And what ends up happening is a confrontation ensues. He pulls his gun. He's got a gun in one hand and a camera in the other hand. And if you're scared, you're going to try and flee the scene. Your first inclination is going to be to flee, not to pull your weapon and then pull your camera to make sure your ass is covered. But that's basically what he did. And so they get into an argument, and, things get kind of, raucous, so to speak. And, the thing that I would have done is, and this is how this man could have got out of this situation. Even if he did so-called feel threatened, you keep your gun trained on whoever it is that you're arguing with, and you back away. And he didn't do that. He stood there, and things got really heated, and he basically executed the guy. I'm going to see if I can find the YouTube video. If I do, I'll post it. So it's stuff like this. And people in favor of the Second Amendment, those of us who are lovers of the Second Amendment, proponents of the Second Amendment, we should not want to see bad laws like Stand Your Ground upheld. And I don't know if it's that the law maybe it's broken, it needs to be fixed, or if the law needs to be removed altogether. I'm not, but it's obvious that there's something very wrong here. But that story didn't make the news. It was two white guys that are around the same age. There's another case where there's two Hispanic men, and one of them ends up stabbing the other one to death over a stolen radio. And these are all people who are unarmed victims. These are unarmed people basically being executed by immoral people over things that most of us just consider annoyances. There's another instance where there's a man, a property owner. This is in a Stand Your Ground state as well, and he's on the phone with a 911 operator, and this man is very clearly in pursuit. The guy had broken into the house in the middle of the night, and he had stolen a bunch of things and had loaded it all onto his truck or whatever. And the homeowner happened to wake up just as, this was in the process of going on. He gets on the phone with 911. You hear everything. You hear the 911 operator repeatedly ask this man not to pursue the perpetrator, because the perpetrator basically at this point was beating a retreat to his vehicle to get away and get off the property. You hear the 911 operator ask the homeowner not to follow the person. You hear the homeowner huffing and blowing, running after this person, heavy breathing on the phone, running after the person as they're trying to beat a retreat. And basically, and on the 911 call, you hear heavy breathing, and then you hear, the 911 operator repeatedly asking the man not to pursue, and then you hear gunshots. So, and I think we can all agree, regardless of, how strongly we feel about castle laws, and I feel very strongly about castle laws. But I'm not going to shoot someone who's beating a retreat. I don't appreciate, obviously, they've broken in my house, they've stolen my hard-earned things that I love. They don't have the right to do that. It's horrible that they've done that. But you don't execute someone over stuff, over things. And that's basically what happened, because this man was trying to get away. He knew he had been busted, he was beating a retreat, he was trying to get away. But again, these, there's no political fodder, so these cases are not making national news the way these cases involving the shooting of these kids have made national news. It's a bad law, and it needs to be fixed or struck down, because what it's done is it's allowed for sociopaths and crazy people to capriciously and arbitrarily execute people. And it's not the castle laws. should stand. I'm very in favor of that. But stand your ground is another thing altogether. And it basically, in effect, and when you read the laws in a lot of the states that have stand your ground laws, it kind of assigns police-like authority to private everyday citizens. And we all know that private everyday citizens are not responsible enough to have this type of authority in a lot of cases. I mean, some people may be, obviously. But remember, there's training and all kinds of things that goes along with becoming a cop and being assigned police authority. Training that people like you and I and everyday people are not going to have in terms of, training from everything, how to exercise judgment, how to assess a threat, how to, take non-lethal steps to resolve a threat, and then ultimately, having to use lethal force. This is all training that police officers have that you and I don't have. But this law basically assigns authority to everyday common people like you and I. Police authority it assigns. And obviously, this is not something that your common person is cut out for, because we don't have police training. We don't have that kind of tactical training your average person. So that's the problem. And, the NRA is responsible by and large for the institution of, the stand your ground laws being instituted in the states where it is legal, which, the NRA basically, I follow closely and I'm a member of both major lobby organizations, both Gun Owners of America and the NRA. My feeling about the NRA, though, is that the NRA is more interested in keeping, they're basically a mouthpiece and a lobbying organization for the Republican Party, is what they've turned into. They're more interested in keeping as many Republicans as possible in office than they are protecting people's gun rights. And it does a disservice to, to people who are in favor, of seeing Second Amendment rights preserved and protected. And it doesn't help that, it's people that are, pro Second Amendment people, we're already perceived as being a bunch of crazies, a bunch of nuts, a bunch of loons, so then you're parading around people like Ted Nugent, who, I mean, don't get me wrong, Ted Nugent just should have stuck to making music. I love Ted Nugent's music, the old rock and roll, but he just should have stuck to that, because it doesn't help us. It doesn't help those of us that want to see Second Amendment rights and the Second Amendment preserved. It doesn't help us to have major groups like the NRA in bed with crazy, parading around crazy, breaking bread with crazy. And that's effectively what happened. People are looking at this and they're, oh my God, seriously? This is what's being endorsed by this group. This is who they have speaking for them. So it really, I don't appreciate being looked at like a crazy for being, in favor of Second Amendment rights. I'm sure you don't, but it's a stigma that we all have to live with. But it doesn't mean, I have a problem with anything that perpetuates that, anything that perpetuates the stereotype of Second Amendment lovers being a bunch of nuts and loons. So yeah, I was very unhappy with them becoming bedfellows with Ted Nugent, especially with the way Ted Nugent behaved and some of the things that were coming out of his mouth. It just didn't help our cause at all. Bad gun laws don't help our cause. No, I think as far as the ability to purchase firearms and carry it concealed, I think that the laws that are in place are enough. We don't need more gun laws. And yeah, I realize that occasionally a crazy, like the one in Colorado, is going to slip through the cracks. It's going to happen. But again, what are we going to do? Outlaw fire because somebody might get burned? Outlaw and heavily restrict people's ability to cross the street because they may get hit by a car? This doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you're going to have people who don't have good intentions, who don't have decency, who don't have a moral compass, or they're just crazy, or all of the above. And they're going to go out and they're going to do terrible things. But these people are in a minority. And the minority, it's the tail wagging the dog. You get things that are happening with a minority of people, a small group of people, and then they want to basically punish the public at large. So laws like stand your ground, this is just gonna get the anti-gun people whipped into a frenzy, and them wanting to chip away at Second Amendment rights. So as gun owners and as people who love the Second Amendment, we shouldn't want to see bad gun laws. We shouldn't want laws like stand your ground. And if they have these laws, then if the law is fixed, then it needs to be, if it's broken, I mean, it needs to be fixed, or it needs to be struck down altogether. But it doesn't do us as gun owners, as Second Amendment lovers, any service. It doesn't do us any service to have laws like this, where people are executing people, and we shouldn't be in favor of stuff like that. The laws that we have, in terms of identifying yourself in background checks, I think are more than enough. But in terms of stand your ground laws, this law is not doing us any favor, and it's gonna whip the gun, the gun grabber people into a frenzy, and give them license. And this is what the bad laws do. The bad laws, it gives them fuel, it gives them ammunition against us to want to come and try to grab guns. And then everyone else is going to look at all these horrible things happening and say, well, yeah, maybe that is a good idea. Maybe we should, grab guns. Maybe we should chip away at people's Second Amendment rights. So, write your state local representative, call them, email them, Twitter them, whatever, and let them know that stand your ground has to be fixed, it has to be modified, or it needs to be struck down. Because these laws don't do us gun owners, Second Amendment lovers, any service. It doesn't do us any service at all. It doesn't help our cause. And it gets the gun grabbers whipped into a frenzy, and it's ridiculous. So, okay, that's the end of my rant. Alright, that's it. Ta-da.